hours of intense shelling, including in the past few minutes. What's the update?
Yes, so Hezbollah is continuing. I just can't hear myself. Yes, that's better. So Hezbollah is continuing their attacks against Israeli northern communities. They also, in the past few minutes, sirens also went off in northern Israel. Apparently, more rockets fired from southern Lebanon. We still have no exact details, but it's in Shtula, which is right in the middle of the Israeli-Lebanese border.
More can Lebanon endure? Now it's on the verge of a complete power outage. I-24 News' Jody Notilovich has more.
Since late Saturday, total darkness has washed over Lebanon as the country's last operational power station ran out of fuel. According to a communiqué by the Zahrani power plant, the outage came after, quote,
exhausting all possible precautionary measures to prolong energy production.
This is not something new. The frequency of power outages has increased significantly over the years as a result of the government's inability to import fuel due to financial constraints.
In Israel, several hundred families from Kibbutz Mefarsim near the Gaza border are finally moving back home. That's 10 months after October 7th. CNN's Wolf Blitzer reports.
For me, it feels good. It feels home.
For Ifat and Shaked Porat, coming home brings mixed emotions.
Are you scared because you're very close to Gaza?
Maybe it's more dangerous, but that's home.
For the first time in 10 months, they are now living in their own home with their 3 kids in the Mefalsim kibbutz. Less than a mile away, on the other side of an 8-foot-tall razor wire fence, lies the Gaza border.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Meanwhile, listen to this. Russian President Vladimir Putin is visiting Azerbaijan. The two countries will sign several cooperation agreements, according to the Kremlin. So joining us now is Ambassador Arthur Lenk, former Israeli ambassador to Azerbaijan. Thank you very much for joining us. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, Yaakov.
Azerbaijan on one side, Iran on the other side, Russia. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev is playing a delicate game there.
Well, I think you're right. And, we think that we live in a tough neighborhood, and we do. Impossible neighborhood. But so do they. And one thing I think that perhaps the Azerbaijanis are better at than we are, and we need to improve on, is finding a way to get along with our neighbors, even the ones that we have disagreements with.
Taliban returned to power 3 years ago. Journalist Shakib Nazari is with us now from Kabul. Good to see you again. What brings the Uzbek to Afghanistan right now?
Well, thanks a lot for having me in tonight's interview. Uzbekistan and Afghanistan has lots of historical and also the cultural ties in the past centuries. Due to that, their interest has been a part of the visit from the Uzbek people to Uzbek high-ranking officials to meet with the Taliban. And it's also one of the biggest movements was the commercial and also the industrial trades between Afghanistan and Uzbekistan.
An update soon, but before that, in Oman, an ancient tree stands strong, offering aromatic resin, once prized more than a gold. Lynn Plachmeyer brings us the story.
In the dry lands of southern Oman, the frankincense harvest has begun.
The method we use to harvest frankincense starts in the month of June. The first cut we make is called the incision, as the tree would have been untouched for 3 months. We leave it for 21 days to later extract the frankincense. The second cut, during which we harvest the produce, is when we keep scraping it for 21 days, during which the frankincense starts to form bit by bit until it's ready. And when we see it become solid, we begin to extract it.
The ancient trees produce a resin once valued more than gold.
These trees are very old, around 5,000 years old BC. Assyrians and Romans had one of their most important trading centers with Assyrians and Canaanites here. They used to race the ships of the pharaohs to reach the Sultanate of Oman, specifically in the south. Dhofar province. As you may know, during the ancient times, they used to gather this frankincense and called it the sacred frankincense, as they used it for their happy and sad occasions, as well as during the funerals of their governors and kings at the time.
In the bustling Al Hafa market in Salalah, vendors proudly display their finest offerings of frankincense, which is in high demand all over the world.
An Israeli has died in yet another terror attack in the West Bank as the IDF takes out 2 senior Hamas operatives in the city of Jenin. We have the details. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has landed in Israel in a bid to finally see a ceasefire and hostage release deal come to fruition. But is it too late? And Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump is taking swipes at the Democratic Party by targeting American Jewish voters. But will he sway the vote? We'll dive in. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and this is The Rundown. It is day 317 of the Israel-Hamas war. And the IDF is currently searching for a suspect who killed an Israeli security guard in the West Bank earlier today and then stole his weapon. The Israeli was attacked at the Balon Industrial Park near the West Bank settlement of Kedumim when a Palestinian assailant hit him in the head with a hammer. We're going to be discussing the ongoing violence in the West Bank later on in the show. But let's turn to U.S. Secretary of State Blinken, who has arrived in Israel today as part of Washington's diplomatic push to reach a ceasefire deal in Gaza that will end the war between Israel and Hamas that has been raging for 10 months now. Our Middle East correspondent Ariel Osran has the latest on the ongoing negotiations.
The mediators for a Gaza ceasefire deal are sounding hopeful after 2 days of talks in Doha. And the U.S. Secretary of State is back in the region to further push the positive momentum.
I'm optimistic, not far from over. Just a couple more issues, I think we got a shot.
Are you more optimistic now than you have been in months past?
Yes.
Why?
If I told you that, I'd give away what's going on.
Making his 10th trip to the region since the war began in October, Blinken will meet on Monday with Israeli leaders.
Hostage Romi Gonen is sadly celebrating her 24th birthday today. Romi was kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival on October 7th when Hamas terrorists infiltrated southern Israel and massacred over 1,200 people. And today, her family is attempting to celebrate her birthday with an event where attendees have been invited to wear leopard print or yellow attire to embody Romi's vibrant spirit. Anders recaps the very latest from the weekend inside the Gaza Strip.
The latest from Gaza. The IDF says ground forces continue to move through Rafah both above and below ground, claiming to have killed some 20 Hamas fighters in the last 24 hours. This while ground forces continue operations around Han Yunis, where they say rocket launch sites have been destroyed. Additional evacuation notices have been announced over the weekend for areas north of Gaza City and west of Han Yunis. And on Friday, the Israeli-designated humanitarian zone shrank, IDF Arabic spokesperson Avihai Andre stating the move came after Hamas, quote, exploited this area and that this part of the humanitarian zone is now dangerous. On Saturday, 2 IDF reservists were killed by a roadside bomb planted along the Netzarim corridor in the center of the Gaza Strip.
Right now, it has been less than 24 hours after 2 senior Hamas terrorists were killed in an Israeli drone strike targeting their car in the West Bank city of Jenin. This took place last night. The IDF and Shin Bet say that the pair were involved in planning a shooting attack in the Jordan Valley last week that killed 23-year-old Israeli Yonatan Deutsch and wounded another civilian, among several other terror attacks that both of these militants were involved in. Now, since October 7th, the IDF has carried out more than 60 airstrikes in the West Bank, primarily using drones, attack helicopters, and also fighter jets. And this latest strike comes just 2 days after dozens of Israeli settlers attacked a village in the north of the West Bank, setting fire to houses and cars. The Palestinian Health Ministry says a 22-year-old man was killed in that attack. The IDF is investigating the incident following Lebanon. A potential war with Israel is not the only thing that is weighing on the heads of Lebanese citizens these days. Frequent power outages have continued to wreak havoc over the country, leaving locals stuck with relying on private generators. And as Lebanon's foreign currency reserves deplete, the central bank has been unable to cover the costs of fuel imports. We have more in this report by our Jody Nuttall-Ovitz.
Since late Saturday, total darkness has washed over Lebanon as the country's last operational power station ran out of fuel.